Good afternoon from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones with your 4:30 p.m. update on what is now Category 2 Hurricane Francine. Francine was upgraded to a Category 2 hurricane just a short time ago with the 4 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. We've received several reports of 100-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts in and around the Eugene Island area. That, combined with Air Force Hunter aircraft data, was enough to convince the Hurricane Center to raise the categorical scale to a Category 2 hurricane. So Francine will be making landfall now as a Category 2 hurricane. I'm going to try to fix this real quick. I'm really dark. I'm going to fix this. I guess I can't fix it right now. Okay, you're just going to have to look at me in the dark. So we're going to talk about that. That's not going to have a whole lot in the way of any significant impacts on or changes to the impacts across the region. We are looking at Francine making a landfall as we speak. Let me go ahead and see if I can throw the radar up here real quick, and we'll take a quick look at that before we dive into our briefing. Again, Francine has a very large eye structure, although it is beginning to decay here over the last few minutes. The exact center of that eye and where it crosses and makes landfall here will be the point at which the Hurricane Center declares a landfall. I expect that's going to be occurring probably while we're going through our briefing here, sometime in the next 10-ish minutes. In fact, I'm checking here just to make sure they haven't done so yet. It looks like they have not. But essentially, we are going to be looking at an official landfall point here shortly. The little blue box or green boxes you see there are flash flood warnings that are currently in effect across the region. We do see a flash flood warning for the Morgan City and Franklin area, and then a second flash flood warning back towards the Houma area. We've seen rainfall rates in this region anywhere in the 3 to 5 inch per hour range. So we are talking about quite a bit of rainfall with this the eye wall as it moves ashore. And within that, we also have those 100 mile per hour plus wind gusts that are no doubt causing power outages and serious issues to parts of south central Louisiana this afternoon. Let me go ahead and see if I can switch back here, and we will jump into our briefing here. As always, if you have any questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in our comment section, and we'll answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing here. Let's start off. Again, Francine, now a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds near 100 miles per hour, and that is where it is going to be at landfall. Landfall is imminent, essentially, looking at an official landfall point probably sometime in the next 10 minutes or so. Hurricane force winds are now moving on shore from Morgan City east to Houma in the northern eye wall of the storm. And then Francine is expected to weaken rapidly once it moves ashore, essentially from now going forward. And we expect to drop below hurricane strength before this evening and continue to weaken very quickly as it moves inland. So this is the highest that we're going to be dealing with in terms of wind speed from Francine. I guess if there is a silver lining, it's all downhill from here. This is the latest satellite view of Francine. You can see it does have a definable eye feature. If I make this full screen, you can get a little bit of a closer look at it there. We are looking at, not just on radar, but also on satellite, a pretty well-defined, although pretty large eye feature as it begins to move ashore. You can see the cloud extent is very large. It extends across pretty much the entire southeastern United States, but it should be weakening very quickly here once it moves inland over the next few minutes or so. This is the 4 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and it does continue to accelerate in forward speed. That's also some good news. We're now looking at a northeastward motion at around 17 miles per hour, which is actually a little bit faster than we were initially anticipating. We were expecting movement right around 15 miles an hour at landfall. So that's a good thing. That means that we're going to be looking at less time for that very heavy rainfall to continue to fall. So that is a good thing from a flash flood perspective. And of course, it's a good thing the less time we have to spend with those very strong winds, the better off everybody is. So the faster it moves out of here, the better off we're going to be. And it is moving at a fairly good clip. Maximum sustained winds are still near 100 miles per hour, and those winds are moving onshore as we speak. We expect the storm to continue to move inland, becoming a tropical storm by tonight, and then depression by tomorrow afternoon, and then just a remnant low by Friday morning by the time it gets up into parts of eastern Arkansas and western Tennessee, where it'll dissipate thereafter. Go. My clicker's not working. We do have a tornado watch currently in effect. This was issued earlier this afternoon. This is going to be in effect until 11 p.m. this evening for St. Landry, Iberia, St. Martin, and St. Mary parishes. This is essentially along and east of where the center of circulation is making landfall. That is the most likely place for tornadoes to develop. This also extends further east into southeast Louisiana and the coastal waters offshore. You see the yellow boxes there, so we could have actually waterspouts developing. That's not uncommon in landfalling hurricanes also. So this goes until 11 o'clock this evening, and as we've been talking about for the last couple of days, the difference between a hurricane-produced tornado versus, say, if you want to call it a quote-unquote ordinary tornado, is that hurricane-produced tornadoes move very quickly. They tend to be fairly weak, but they may only be on the ground for a minute or two, but they may travel several miles because of how fast they're moving. They may be moving 50, 60, 70 miles an hour within the flow of the hurricane itself. And because of the fact that they're usually only on the ground for a minute or two, oftentimes they form in between radar scans. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes for the radar to do a rotation and get a full scan. So oftentimes we at the National Weather Service, trying to issue warnings for those tornadoes, will often miss them because they'll occur between those radar scans and we'll never actually know they're there. So keep in mind that there is a tornado threat until 11 p.m. this evening, and that there may not always be a tornado warning issued for tornadoes that develop during hurricanes. We do still have tropical storm warnings and hurricane warnings in effect. The tropical storm warning that had previously been in effect for Jeff Davis Parish has been canceled, so we're no longer expecting tropical storm force winds across Jeff Davis Parish. And the hurricane warning that was previously in effect for northern Vermilion Parish has been reduced down to a tropical storm warning now. Now we're only expecting hurricane force conditions right along the coastal portions of Vermilion Parish and not up towards the northern part of the parish. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for southern Vermilion, Iberia, St. Martin, and St. Mary parishes, and tropical storm warnings remain in effect for East Cameron, Acadia, St. Landry, and Lafayette parishes. As the storm continues to move inland and begins to decay, we'll likely see these hurricane warnings dropped as we go through the evening. This is a look at our forecast maximum wind gusts, and forecast is pretty much becoming reality at this point because this is about what we've been seeing out there. I'm just looking over my shoulder here. Patterson recently reported a 56 mile per hour wind gust and then a subsequent 63 mile per hour wind gust. So essentially that's what we're looking at. What you see on the screen here is approximately what we're dealing with at the moment, at least in the vicinity of the landfalling hurricane and the eye wall. We're looking at 90 to 100 mile per hour winds just outside of the Morgan City area between Morgan City and Houma, and much lighter winds as we get further back to the west. We have been breezy across the region otherwise, but thankfully the hurricane force winds and the strongest winds are confined to a fairly small sector right along that eye wall as it moves ashore here. So it's going to definitely cause some serious impacts to areas that it affects, but it's going to affect a relatively small area compared to the tropical storm force winds. We do still have a flood watch in effect across the region, essentially for East Cameron, Vermilion, Acadia, Lafayette, St. Landry, Rapides, Avoyelles, St. Martin, St. Mary, and Iberia. This is going to go until Thursday morning, and you saw by the two flash flood warnings that we had out earlier that we are seeing ongoing flooding across parts of the area as the storm moves inland, and we're going to continue to see that rainfall continue across those areas at least through late this evening, if not through very early tomorrow morning. This is a look at our forecast rainfall totals. This hasn't changed a whole lot, and this is still generally what we're looking at, 6 to 8 inches across parts of St. Mary Parish and Iberia Parish. 3 to 4 inches as you get a little bit further away from the storm, Lafayette, St. Landry, Vermilion, and then as we get west of there, much lower rainfall totals. There are plenty of areas across southwest Louisiana, central Louisiana, and southeast Texas that haven't seen any rain at all today, and you may not actually see any because the west side of the storm really doesn't have a whole lot of rain with it at the moment, as we saw on the radar there at the top of the broadcast here. We do still have storm surge hazards in effect, although these are also gradually coming down on the western side. All of Cameron Parish now on a coastal flood advisory, which is a step lower, a step down from a storm surge warning. A storm surge warning is issued when we're expecting more than 3 feet of surge. A coastal flood advisory is issued when we're expecting 1 to 3 feet of surge. So, and actually most of the surge, the highest surge values have already occurred or are occurring now. So we should gradually see those winds are going to shift out of the north over the next couple of hours. And those surges that are ongoing should begin to improve as that water is pushed back out into the Gulf of Mexico by that northerly flow. As far as storm surge values right now, again, this is probably about approximately what is ongoing. We've got between about 5 and 10 feet of surge between Burns Point and Port Fourchon. We've got 2 to 4 feet of surge between Vermilion and the Karen Parish, between the Vermilion-Karen Parish line to Burns Point, and then 1 to 3 feet of surge from Cameron west to Freeport. That's why that is covered by that coastal flood advisory as opposed to a storm surge warning. So that's what we have here this afternoon for you from the National Weather Service. Again, landfall is imminent. Let me check again here just to see if the Hurricane Center has provided an update yet. They usually put out a special update when they have declared a landfall. I am not seeing that yet, but that's okay. It will be occurring here very shortly. This is going to be our last briefing with regards to this storm, as we are looking at the most significant impacts now. Conditions are going to be beginning to improve thereafter. So, there's no point for preparedness briefings now that the storm is actually already moving inland. At this point, it's more observational and warnings. And then after that, it'll be cleanup and recovery. So let me go ahead and back up here and see if you do have any questions. If you do have a question, feel free to throw it in our comment section here. I'll be happy to answer it over the next few minutes while we wait to see if the Hurricane Center declares a landfall. And let me go ahead and back up here. And I'll see if we do have any questions over here. Blood Rain asks, since the things become more flood and tornado threats, do you have to feel for the people in Arkansas and Tennessee as the storm slows down there? As the storm begins to decay and becomes a remnant low, then the flood threat does, if not increase, at least remain the same. And you tend to see a lot more in the way of tornado development as a storm is breaking down and moving further inland, it seems like. So I do expect that we'll see tornado watches continue up through parts of eastern Arkansas, western Tennessee, a large part of Mississippi as we go through the overnight hours and into tomorrow. Same thing with those flash flood watches and warnings. As the storm moves inland, it's going to be dumping copious amounts of rainfall over bands that could stretch for a few hundred miles. Blood Rain says these tornadoes can also be hard to spot due to being rain wrapped. You're absolutely right. When you think about the torrential rainfall, and all of these tornadoes are going to occur within those rain bands. So the tornadoes and hurricanes are almost always rain wrapped. That does make them very difficult to see, and also add to the fact that they're usually moving about 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. You don't look out your window and see them coming. You just get hit by them. Lori says we had about a spoonful of rain in Hackberry and DeRidder. That's a good unit of measure, and that's probably all that you're gonna see too. Lorelai and Lori says, I'll miss you. See you next storm. Let's hope that's not for a really long time. Fingers crossed that this is the last tropical system we have to deal with this season. I don't mind if they form out in the middle of the Atlantic. They can do that. There is one out there. There is Tropical Depression 7, but that is forecasted to remain way, way out there, and that's perfectly okay with me. All right, not seeing too much in the way of questions. I'm going to hang on here for just another couple of minutes, see if the Hurricane Center does declare a landfall. Just got a video here. Okay. We're on a chat with all the area emergency managers and such. I was just making sure there wasn't anything chaotic going on. No, it's just the flag blowing in the wind. That tends to happen. Coming back, let's pull the radar back up here and take a look at what we've got here. So essentially, you can see as this the eastern part of this eye wall here has really kind of broken down over the last few minutes. Of course, when I'm drawing on it, it's going to stop. But you can see the reflectivities have really kind of dissipated on the eastern side of that eye wall there as it's interacted with land. The center of circulation at one point was about 40 miles across. So the Hurricane Center has got to pinpoint exactly where the middle of that is for it to move ashore before it declares an official landfall point. That should be happening, I would imagine, fairly soon, as we're pretty much right in the middle of that at this point. It's going to be somewhere along the coast between Morgan City and Houma. This is the area I was talking about earlier with those very high rainfall rates, the 3 to 5 inch an hour rainfall rates. When you're talking about rainfall rates that high, if you're even on the low end, 3 inches per hour is certainly enough to cause street flooding. And when you're looking at that for a couple of hours, that's how you get those 6, 8, 12 inches of rainfall that pile up very quickly within just a 2 or 3 hour period. And even in the best of times, the your drainage systems are not going to be built to withstand those kind of rainfall rates. So flash flooding is almost a certainty in those cases. All right, one more check to just to see if the Hurricane Center has declared a landfall. They have not yet, but I do expect that will be coming fairly shortly, probably within the next 15 minutes or so. And once it does, we will do a post on our social media pages to identify where that was and all the details along with that. Amber says, "Oh no, Donald after dark tonight." Nope, not tonight. That was last night. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, as always, if you have a question that you think of once we get off of our briefing here, or if you're viewing this as a recording, feel free to send me an email directly at my email on your screen there. It's donald.jones@noaa.gov. My name with a dot in the middle at noaa.gov. What? I got people pointing at me.
Just hold on. I would continue to do this for like another 5 to 10 minutes.
I'm told to keep doing this for 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. That's awfully cryptic. Okay. Guess we'll hang out for 5 or 10 more minutes. I guess I trust the people out there. I just come running in here in the operations area and said, keep doing it for 5 or 10 more minutes. I guess we can hang out for 5 or 10 more minutes. What do you want to talk about? Well, I'll keep my email up there. If you do have any questions, of course, we're still here, so I can answer them now. But feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook anytime. We'll be happy to answer those questions for you. And he says, hold on, I'll think of a question. Let me back up here and see if there's any questions that I missed. Lorna's asking about Bay St. Louis. Unfortunately, I can't talk intelligently about Bay St. Louis. That's not the area we cover. And that's what I'm, for everybody who's asking about questions outside of the area that we cover, I would love to answer them, but I just haven't been paying that close attention to those specific areas because we zoom in on the area that we focus on. We try to provide as much detail as we can. And we have other weather forecast offices that provide details for those areas. Blood Rain says Tropical Depression 7 will be, as some weathermen call it, a fish storm. A fish storm, it, God willing, will be. Yeah, no, it does look like it's going to stay out there, and it's actually going to remain very weak. I think the strongest that the Hurricane Center forecasts it to be is a tropical storm. Daniel says, do a TikTok dance. I promise you, you do not want to see me do a TikTok dance. Blood Rain says they want you to hang on for that center landfall location. That's very possible. They're probably talking to the Hurricane Center right now. Actually, we do have an update here. We do have a landfall. It's official. There we go. All right, let's put it up there. All right, so we've got Francine has a landfall location. We can read it together like a family. Francine has made landfall in southern Louisiana in the parish of Terrebonne, 30 miles southwest of Morgan City, as a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds estimated at 100 miles per hour. This was the report we talked about a little while ago with Eugene Island reporting 105 mile per hour winds. Let me put this so you can actually see it. So there it is. We officially have a landfall point. Everybody yell, yay, yay. Okay. So there is your landfall point now, officially 30 miles southwest of Morgan City. Elizabeth asked, will it get worse for New Iberia than it is at the moment, or is this the worst of it? I think this is going to be just about the worst of it for you in the New Iberia area. I don't expect it to get a whole lot worse than you're dealing with right now. Penny, I gave you my answer before you asked the question. Now that we know the landfall, I can't guess. That's okay. All right, so there we go. We do have our landfall location now, and we will continue to monitor this progress of the storm. We will provide updates as necessary if we do have any significant changes. We do expect the storm to rapidly decrease in intensity now going forward, and the bigger threat is going to shift now from the 100-mile-an-hour winds as the storm rapidly decays to more of a flash flood threat. So we will continue to monitor that through the evening, as well as that potential risk for tornadoes as well. Like we talked about, if you do have a question, send me a direct message on Facebook, send me an email, give me a call, numbers on the screen there, send us a message on Instagram, send us an X on X, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. In the meantime, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's bid farewell and good riddance to Francine here just as soon as we can, and hope we don't have to do this again anytime soon. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you again not so soon.